Okay, we are live. Where's Audacity? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 148 that we are titling EFF the FCC. If you read that out loud, just it's not safe for work, but you can read it. Mumble it to yourself. Remember, they're asking for people to go to the FCC message boards and comment. And we're going to explain to you why you should comment. Because there's no right or wrong. There's only wrong, right? There's only wrong. You can only be wrong here.
Yes, so, absolutely.
There
are no right answers.
There's no you don't want to be anti-net neutrality. No one wins that way.
Right.
So
well, someone wins that way. If you're a shareholder of Comcast, Verizon, or Time Warner, I'm sorry. What are they? They're not Charter. They're Spectrum now. You might win for the short term.
But what happens if the NFL aligns themselves with Verizon, but Comcast now needs to show the NFL games? Can Verizon say, well, even though you're not competing, can Verizon now charge more, effectively hurting Comcast?
It really depends. Net neutrality, a world without net neutrality kind of looks like cable TV does today, right? You want to watch Game of Thrones, but you can't because you don't pay for HBO. So you don't watch Game of Thrones. Instead, you might try to download the HBO app or, find another account that way or watch at your buddy's house. Or there's other ways to get your Game of Thrones fix on. But imagine if the internet was kind of like that, where, Comcast or Time Warner says, okay, all right, you can have Wikipedia, but you can't go to YouTube and you can't go to Spotify. We're going to charge you extra for the YouTube and Spotify that you consume. But you can get all the Wikipedia you want, and that's great. Everyone loves Wikipedia, right? But the issue is, right now, the internet is a free and open marketplace. If I wanted to create a competitor to YouTube called, MyTube or AwesomeTube, I could. And if I'm better, if I scale better, if I get the users, I can theoretically take YouTube down. By the sheer force of competition and awesomeness that my website would bring to the internet, people would just love me and hate YouTube. And that's great. That's what the internet's built on, right? That's why we got rid of Dogpile. Yahoo search is terrible, and now we're all on Google until someone supplants them. It's this healthy competition, and that's what drives the internet forward. That's why it's become the awesome thing it is today. Getting rid of net neutrality kills off any potential competition.
So if you remember that MySpace was it. That was the bee's knees. Tom Anderson got $500 million in 2002, something like that.
It was a giant payday.
And because nobody was gonna destroy MySpace, stuff like that. And then here comes Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, and everyone complained, "Oh, you can't do cool backgrounds. He put you in this silo. You did this, you did that." And now look at what's it called? Facebook, basically 1 billion active daily users.
And, sooner or later, maybe one day, I'm not going to say in the next year or so, but maybe one day, someone will come out with Bookfacer or some other kind of social network and take all of Facebook's users and become the newest, hottest thing for the next 5 to 10 years before it gets destroyed by the latest, competitor. It's great. It's beautiful. It's the epitome of the free market and free competition. And that's why the internet and people on the internet just have to get better. Because if Yahoo search sucks, if Twitter sucks, right? And Twitter's got a lot of negative stuff around it, especially recently. A Twitter competitor could come along and totally eat their lunch, take their users, get their market share. It's great and it's healthy because it constantly trends towards us wanting and getting better services instead of the situation we have in areas where there's no competition, right? Look at your local cable companies. Maybe you have two. Hopefully you have more than two or even just two. I lived in an area with one. and they had no incentive to provide better speeds. They had no incentive to have better customer service or a more stable network because they just didn't care. Who were you going to go to, right? Where can you run to if the service is absolutely terrible? Nowhere. You're stuck.
So I live in central New Jersey, and we had Optimum, which, by the way, Optimum for the cable companies was really good. I can't really say too much bad about Optimum. I can say plenty bad, but compared to the others, they're pretty good. So they were the only game in town, and I had some issues. Then Fios comes along, and now I get daily. Now I'm on Fios. I get daily knocks on my door, not daily, but maybe once a week. Come back to Optimum. Come back to Optimum. And I go, look. What you did is you took on HGTV and the Food Network for a month. Since my wife cares and she doesn't pay the bill, she wants that. Well, no, we had to do it. It was to save you money. I go, my wife is mad at you. We will, until Verizon screws up, we won't get it. But we had that competition. They will always come and say, what can we do? Before that, we didn't have anything. Nobody cared. They said, this is the price. And did you ever notice that with these cable companies, nobody pays the same price for the same channels? They always have these deals and that deals. So it's up to them on whatever they want to charge. Having that option is always the better answer.
Yeah, it's great. And the internet is special because unlike starting your own cable company, right? I can start a competitor to YouTube with a little bit of elbow grease and, a fairly cheap hosting plan on the internet, right? For less than like $20 a month, I can try to compete with my tiny, dinky little YouTube competitor on the internet. And maybe if it gets big, maybe if I start making money, I can grow and pay for a better hosting plan and go to a cloud provider and get sysadmins in a building in San Francisco. And you name it, we'll have it. But you can start out with nothing, whereas starting a cable company or a physical competitor business is really difficult. You've got to get people, you have to have infrastructure. Physical competition and taking upon physical goods and physical capital is slow and hard and takes investors and money, and that's why it's kind of hard to physically compete in the real world. The internet, some nerdy kid with some time between college classes can create a social network that will dominate the world for the next 10 years. That's what makes the internet special. And if we get rid of net neutrality, we get rid of that. We get rid of the absolute open, sheer competition, the entrepreneurship the internet delivers.
So what net neutrality isn't, and I hear this a lot, we don't want someone using all the bandwidth. No, the cable companies can charge for using more bandwidth. So if you want to say, hey, I don't want your box, but I'm just going to stream everything, and Comcast says, you know what, 1 terabyte's your cap, otherwise you have to go to the business plan, they can do that. That's not anti-competitive. That's just saying you're using too much data, and that's a use tax. That's okay. I've heard that. Well, then I hear, I don't use 4K, so I shouldn't have to pay for other people's 4K. Again, that's not net neutrality. If they want to stream higher quality, I think you can do that, right? 4K versus HD. They can say no. That's not net neutrality. What we're talking about is whatever's coming through that pipe, regardless of what it is, comes to you.
So with net neutrality, if you wanted to, if I were on my Roku and I said, Netflix, give me 4K content, my ISP could not say you're not allowed. That would be against net neutrality. They can't limit me to 1080p, like what T-Mobile does with their binge on program, where they say, oh yeah, totally unlimited data, but all your YouTube videos are going to look terrible. They're all going to be in this 240p or 480p box, and you're going to have the terrible audio compression. It's just going to be a terrible experience. But hey, it's unlimited. That's against net neutrality. I asked for a video at this quality, and you're intentionally downgrading my connection. You are taking the bits that go through your network, and you're making a judgment on whether or not they can go through or how fast certain bits can go through, right? Even quality of service stuff is technically against net neutrality. Now, if my ISP wanted to charge me for how much data I was consuming, if they say, okay, look, this is the price per megabyte or per gigabyte or per terabyte that we're going to charge you for your data, I'm okay with that. It's not the pricing model that people are too used to. The pricing model that people are used to, at least in America, is I want this speed on average, and I'm going to pay this much per month for all you can eat. That's great, but it doesn't stop people like me from streaming 4K Netflix all day, every day, which does take up some, temporary resources and a time slot from other people. Because if everyone streams 4K Netflix at the same time, it tends to slow stuff down. Now, there's even more semantic arguments with network build-outs and capacity management and that kind of stuff, but that doesn't really have a whole lot to do with net neutrality. What net neutrality is at its core is the bits that come from here or the bits that come from over there, they have to be treated the same way in the network. They can't go faster, they can't go slower, they can't be blocked. They're just bits, and you have to treat them equally.
So again, I want to go back to the binge on service because this is interesting. T-Mobile started where you can get your service part of binge on, but what they were really doing, I think, was excluding YouTube. Like if you looked at it, YouTube just never got onto it. And they eventually stopped that. What they did is what you described, where they lower everything to 480. Now, how are they getting away with it at this point in time? And I think the answer is, and I'm not sure, is because they're offering you that you can use your data to stream it. But if you don't want to use your data, you can get everything compressed to that quality. Or the courts haven't gotten around to it yet.
I think that's more it. It's definitely a semantic argument. But I would think that it's really just that T-Mobile hasn't been smacked around by a court yet.
So, I mean, anything else that you hear, a lot of the stuff that you hear doesn't have anything to do with net neutrality, but once it does, you'll know. And basically, like you said, the bits flowing through can't be changed or throttled in any way. Now, the next question is, does that mean that if net neutrality goes out the window, they can deep packet inspect, which in fact essentially breaks security?
I mean, they technically could do that today if they wanted to deep packet inspect everything. Nothing's stopping them except for consumers, right? If consumers and support costs. So if every time I went to Google, I got the big red splash screen that says something's wrong with your connection, someone's intercepting this, they're going to get support calls, right? My grandmother is going to call her ISP and say something's wrong. I mean, first she's going to call me and complain, and then I'm going to find out it's Time Warner, and then I'm going to yell at Time Warner on the support line. It would be a whole lot for them to manage, but ISPs could theoretically force their consumers, their customers, to install a certificate so they could inspect all HTTPS traffic. We're not at that level of like 1984 Orwellian dystopian internet future, not yet anyway. But they could. And for clear text services, absolutely, they would be deep packet inspecting that, right? They may or may not throttle things like VPNs. They probably definitely would throttle video streaming or any peer-to-peer services, if they allow peer-to-peer services at all. There's a whole lot of bad that would happen on the internet when people can start degrading service based on the whims of business partners. And that gets into a really nasty thing where we saw, a couple years back, Comcast and Netflix kind of butt heads, where Comcast said, hey, Netflix sucks on Comcast because you haven't paid us enough money. If you throw up some money, if you pony up some cash to us, all your customers will be great, right? That's a nice streaming service you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. It's a protection racket. And that's what these cable companies really want by getting rid of net neutrality. They want to go to Google, they want to go to Facebook, and they want to go to Netflix especially and say, give us a bunch of money or we're going to degrade your service. Effectively knocking them off the net.
Now, from what I remember, the Netflix issue, that was a peering agreement issue, right? I don't think that was specifically net neutrality.
It is net neutrality, though. It does fall under that. Peering agreements are generally, there's no hard and fast law. It's all kind of, gentleman handshakes and people in back rooms saying, yeah, okay, I'll peer with your traffic if you peer with mine, because we're generally interested in creating a better network for everyone. What Comcast did is they broke that unspoken rule and they started asking for money, which is absolutely against the spirit of net neutrality, if not the actual law. And you can look at the Netflix graphs, and Netflix has a great technical blog post if you're into networking, where you can see the exact moment the money hit Comcast bank account, because you can see the throughput of Netflix data, and right after that payment went through, it jumped through the roof. You can just see the blip on the graph right there.
And the same thing with Verizon. I don't think I had that, and AT&T as well. So, and you always heard that if you used your work VPN, which you shouldn't do, but if you did, you got Netflix way faster, as long as you changed your ISP that in doing so. So
I do that with T-Mobile and YouTube when I want to watch a video in high quality on YouTube. And I know T-Mobile is throttling it. I fire up my VPN connection and I watch my videos over that. And you know what? Because they can't tell it's coming from YouTube, it goes at perfect speeds. And that is absolutely against net neutrality. And you know, frankly, I shouldn't have to do that. As a consumer, I'm paying for a certain speed of a pipe. I'm paying for a certain data package, and I should get what I've been paying for.
So this is a weird story. This came out, I don't know, almost 10 years ago. Verizon went to New Jersey and said, we want tax breaks, but in return, we'll build out FiOS and we'll get 98% of New Jerseyans on high-speed internet. So that's where we got FiOS from. A lot of areas, FiOS started, and then all of a sudden in 2016, the 10 years was up. They had to get it. They had to start answering questions, and they said, well, we did that. And everyone's looking at that. What do you mean you did that? FiOS is not in my area. Oh, we blanketed with 4G LTE. You talk about broadband, you can get Verizon in all these places. So we're going to equate 4G LTE to Wi-Fi from FiOS. And the New Jersey state legislature bought that, and they just stopped expanding FiOS at all. They got all the tax breaks, but basically, oh, you wanted high-speed internet? Use your data plan to get it.
This happens so often, or I should say, it used to happen so often. And it's not from lawmakers. It's because people have gotten away from it, or they've used that excuse enough that they don't have to anymore. So many different ISPs swore up and down, oh yeah, we're totally going to roll fiber. We're going to light up, rural America. We're going to light up all of the cities and suburbs with crazy high speed, awesome internet. And they get, 20, 30, 50% through, and they go, wow, this is actually a lot more money and a lot more effort than we originally thought. We'll just stop doing it. And for the most part, they've gotten off scot-free with that, and I don't understand how that happened.
So I just tell people, every time Verizon says, we'll help you get on Wi-Fi, I just reply on their Twitter account and say, why should we? You said that 4G LTE was exactly the same. Now, can you lower my bill to the same FiOS cost? And of course, the answer is never. They never respond. But anyway, so what can you do? So we've been talking about this for a long time now as it is. So if you want more detail, and I usually don't plug the John Oliver last week tonight, but he puts all his episodes on YouTube for free. Usually he's very, very left-wing if you're into politics, but this was pretty spot on. I did not see any bias in what he was saying. He went both sides, and he said, this is important. This is important for everyone. And then he had a link there. I think it was gofccyourself.com. And then the funny story is the next day, and we'll get to that in a minute, the FCC said they were DDoSed. But anyway, the EFF also has a thing. So you can request for comment. You can type what you want. The EFF has their own, and we're linking it in the show notes. It's dearfcc.org. You go there. They basically write the letter for you. You give them the information. They have a box that you have something in. I urge you to write something in there so it's a little bit different, and say why you want net neutrality. Just give it a line. And you can say you don't want cable companies to have too much power. They already have too much power. Just anything you want, you hit send, and it automatically sends it. Now, if you live in a state where you have governors that are, or Congress people, anti-net neutrality, this is where you also need to call. I live in an area that's completely in line with my views, so there's no need calling. But other ones, call them and tell them that this is important to you. Let them get flooded.
Yeah, this is, as we saw at the previous net neutrality fight, Actual, comments to the FCC, at least under Tom Wheeler, which we, in the internet, at least in my circles around the internet, we had pegged this guy as kind of, a former cable company lobbyist, totally one of the bad guys. He's going to try to destroy the internet at large, and instead he was like the hidden spy behind enemy lines this whole time, and he was a champion of net neutrality, and he totally took up the sword and fight for the good guys. It was great, but comments to the FCC, the actual huge outpouring of people actually had an effect. They read through the comments, they aggregate the comments, they look at okay, how much political blowback are we going to get for our decision coming up? Comments to the FCC actually hold some weight. If you've ever written an email to a senator or congressperson and you felt like, okay, that was kind of a wasted 2 minutes of my effort, the FCC one probably holds a little bit more weight. Mostly because they don't get as much screen time as people in Congress, but also because it's kind of their job to read those comments. Not that it's not Congress's job, but I digress. I don't want to delve too deep into American politics on the show.
Again, if you want to talk to your congressperson, a phone call is the only way. And don't be afraid, because you're just leaving a message. You're getting the switchboard and saying, I want to talk to your senator. And they will say, okay, hold on. And it is, even if somebody picks up, just say, I want to voice my opposition to or voice my support for whatever it is. They'll listen to you. And all they're doing really is tallying pros and cons. And if somebody's undecided, they're saying we got more pros than cons. And that's how that's how they should be voting based on their constituents.
Yeah. So there's there was a great Reddit thread by a congressional staffer that worked for a congressman. And they said, okay, look, if you want to get in charge of someone get in touch with someone about an issue, it's sending a letter after it goes through security and gets routed and everything else. The issue you're writing about has already passed. So don't bother writing a letter. It's too slow and there's too much security around it right now. Email, it's okay, but most of the time it gets filtered out or ignored. A phone call, we're sitting there all day long, typing stuff into an Excel spreadsheet or a database somewhere about your opinion on that issue. It's our job to sit there and take your calls and then make your opinions known later. So there are people, it's their job to take your opinion and pass it up the chain. So absolutely give your Congress critters a call.
So that's us on net neutrality. I mean, there's enough of it. You're going to see it. If you're listening to us, you've heard us talk about this 3 years ago. We're telling you again, call for the comment. This should be another full court press. And what people are hoping is that everyone's getting tired and saying, didn't we do this already? Why is this coming back? And it's essentially the same argument. So please do something. So I want to bring this up. So while we're talking about that, Ars Technica is reporting, and not just them, that somebody in the why we can't have nice things department sort of hacked the FCC comments system and flooded them with comments. The problem is they're all fake. I think they said something like 150,000 fake comments, which is really annoying. But
yeah, hopefully the FCC doesn't decide to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, okay, we're getting rid of all the comments. I think that would be ridiculous and probably negligent on their part, because with some analysis, you can definitely tell what's real and what's not, what's put there by a bot. Maybe they weren't using 1,000 proxies or 1,000 Tor nodes. Maybe it was all coming from one IP address. That should be okay. That should be reasonable enough to filter out. Maybe it's all got the same wording. Well, now it's really easy. You just get rid of the duplicates. Yeah, it's the internet. And now some FCC sysadmin has to go through and try to harden their comment system a wee bit more.
Well, I mean, the good thing is that it's a freedom of speech issue. I don't want to get in there because I don't know. I'm just talking now. So, and I don't know how much time we have for two stories, but the last story I want to talk about. So the French elections just happened, and the day before all the French people went to go to the polls, WikiLeaks or somebody dumped all of, I can't pronounce his name, Emmanuel Macron, the winner at this point, his emails, just like Hillary. The great thing is that people were like putting all these sensationalized stories. Turns out they were all fake. So Macron's OPSEC team put out a whole bunch of fake identities and fake emails and all these fake things to lead people that if it ever got out, they wouldn't know what's real. And I just thought that was awesome.
This is fantastic. This is indirection and just classic anti-espionage stuff. You plant the fake story, it gets discovered, it blows up, and then you're like, you're caught out. You've been spying the whole time, and now we know. This is wonderful OPSEC, and we Americans could learn some lessons here. This is some great sleight of hand.
We've constantly heard that the U.S. elections may or may not have been influenced by Russia, and the Russians and the French and the Germans are going through this, and the highest now next profile election are the French. So whoever the person is on their security team probably said, you know what, we have to do something because it's inevitable. Somebody's going to get hacked somewhere along the lines, and they set this up. And I think this is just awesome. And I really think that this may be the new normal, to set up some fake accounts, fake profiles, and have to do this sort of OPSEC just to keep things in line.
Yeah, I mean, the first step is encrypting everything you can and not leaving traces where you can afford to get rid of and securely remove data. If there's nothing to find, there's nothing to leak, sort of stuff. That doesn't mean you're totally going to get rid of leaks, right? You can still have insiders in your party kind of grab stuff, take screenshots, ship it off to WikiLeaks or the New York Times. Leaks will happen, especially in politics, but if you're trying to guard against people getting into your Exchange server and dumping all the emails, well, if 90% of the emails are fake or auto-generated anyway, there's not a whole lot there to go on. It's great classic espionage misdirection, and I think we're going to see more of this going forward. And anyway, it's just entertaining when this stuff gets called out.
It's unbelievable. Look. Now, on the flip side, this may suggest that WikiLeaks took this and just dumped it, which is absolutely the right thing to do. If you want to say that WikiLeaks is this great organization, you can't. They have to dump everything as they get it, rather than wait for the right time and then edit out certain things. So it looks like they got a dump and they just dumped it all out. So I guess that's a good thing. But the problem is, of not going through it now, we have all this fake information there, for better or worse. I mean.
Yeah, and now it calls, because WikiLeaks followed their original mantra of just dumping when they receive stuff and dumping, carte blanche, no editing, no editorializing, how we all grew to respect them. And most of this stuff, or we don't know how much of this stuff is faked, is just fabricated. It really turns their credibility around. Not that they had a whole lot to lose now, but and the news organizations that were printing all the fake stuff, it shows that their vetting process maybe isn't as tight or as foolproof as they wanted it to be. It makes people call these organizations that don't do their fact checking into question, which is probably a good little bit of self-introspection for the news organizations, and really good to critical readers.
So anyway, we're running out of time. I just want to remind everyone, we do have a WhatsApp group. Tweet at us. It's a little hard to get in, only because we do have to verify that you're a legitimate person. It's not hard. Just look legitimate. Don't be a robot. And if you're tweeting us, you're probably not a robot, but just make sure you're a legitimate person.
I'm going to make you click all the stop signs in a CAPTCHA. I'm just going to keep sending you pictures of stop signs and saying, what is this? And you'll say a stop sign. I'll send you like 6 more.
If you're an egg picture and you have no profile and no followers, yeah, it's a little hard to get you in. through Twitter. If you want to email us or whatever else, find another way to communicate. We are just checking to make sure you are a legitimate person and won't be trying to sell us Bitcoins or Ray-Ban sunglasses or whatever else.
So you're saying that we're using extreme vetting?
I don't know if it's that extreme, but because there's no end game. So if you start spamming, we will kick you. But the point is, we don't want to waste our time. Please don't wait. Well, if you're listening to this, you're not wasting our time. It's the other people who see a link and say, "Hey, we want in." So
yeah, and if you want to ask, general security questions, or does this app look legit? Is this VPN okay? I set my network up in this way. Is this cool? That's totally not a waste of time. We love questions. I love answering questions, and if I can help you get a little bit more secure, I'm not wasting my time at all.
So, and I mean, we just it's basically this podcast during business hours for the whole week. So it's always a good time, and we're not that obtrusive. So, and you can always mute us while you're working. So anyway, we'll leave you with that, and we will see everyone next week. Bye, everyone.
See you, everyone.
All right.